People don't lose faith because God isn't real. They lose it because he stayed silent when they were breaking. Let me ask you something honestly. Do you still believe in God after the silence? Not when life is stable. Not when prayers feel poetic. Not when everything makes sense. I mean when everything fell apart. When you did everything right and still lost. When you prayed and nothing changed. When you asked for strength and received more pressure. When you whispered, please, and the only thing that answered back was your own breathing. That's the moment belief stops being cultural. That's the moment it becomes personal. Because it's easy to believe in God when life makes sense. It's easy to say, God is good, when you're winning. But what about when you're exhausted? When you're staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering what you did wrong? When you feel ignored? Not abandoned, ignored. Silence is worse than rejection. Rejection at least acknowledges you. Silence makes you question if anyone was listening at all. And here's the dangerous truth. Most people don't lose faith because of tragedy. They lose it of unanswered prayers. Because belief is not just belief. It is expectation. And when expectation collapses, something inside you fractures. Not loudly, quietly. You still say you believe, but you stop asking honestly. You start expecting response. You start protecting yourself from hope. Because hope hurts when it goes unanswered. This is not a religious debate. This is about what happens to belief when God becomes silent. Before you ever chose God, God was chosen for you. You didn't discover him. You inherited him. He came to you through stories, through voices you trusted, through rules you never questioned. As a child, God was simple. He was watching. He was judging. He was rewarding. He was punishing. You were told, if you're good, God is pleased. If you're bad, God is angry. And slowly, without realizing it, you learned something dangerous, that God's love must be earned. So you behaved, you obeyed. You memorized what was right and feared what was wrong. Not because you understood truth, but because you were afraid of consequences. This is where belief quietly turns into conditioning. Most people don't believe in God. They believe in the version of God that kept them safe as children. A God who approves. A God who protects. A God who punishes others, but spares you. And as long as life is predictable, this God works. But life does not stay predictable. One day, reality interrupts the story. Something happens that should not happen. Something unfair. Something irreversible. You pray the way you were taught. You follow the rules. You wait. But nothing changes. This is the moment most people never talk about. The moment belief doesn't disappear. It fractures. You still say you believe, but something inside you goes quiet. You stop asking real questions. You replace faith with habit. You keep the structure, but the connection fades. And here's the uncomfortable truth. A God built on fear cannot hold you together when fear becomes your reality. So you renegotiate. You don't leave God immediately. You adjust him. You make him distant, mysterious, busy. You say, God works in ways we can't understand. Not because it comforts you, but because it stops the questions. Because if you ask the real questions, the entire structure might collapse. And deep down, you're afraid of that collapse. Because if the God you were taught is wrong, then what else might be wrong? Your values, your sacrifices, your suffering. So you stay silent. You keep belief alive on the surface and let it fade quietly inside. And this is where many people get stuck. Not believers, not non-believers. Just tired humans carrying an outdated image of God that no longer fits the weight of their life. And here's the part no one tells you. This stage is not failure. It is transition. This stage is not failure. It is transition. Because the loss of the God you were taught is not the loss of God. It is the loss of a childhood framework. And losing that framework hurts. It feels like betrayal. Like standing alone in a universe that suddenly feels indifferent. There comes a moment in every serious human life when God stops speaking. Not dramatically, quietly. You keep praying. You keep using the same words. But something feels different. The answers don't arrive. The comfort doesn't come. And the most painful part is this. You don't feel abandoned. You feel ignored. Silence is heavier than rejection. Rejection at least confirms presence. Silence makes you question whether anyone was listening at all. This is where belief is truly tested, not when miracles happen, but when nothing happens. You ask for strength and receive more pressure. You ask for clarity and receive confusion. You asked for relief and receive time, long, unbearable time, and a dangerous thought begins to form. If God is real, why does he allow this? Most people never say it out loud. They're afraid of the question itself, because questioning God feels like betrayal. So they suppress the doubt. But suppression does not remove doubt, it buries it, and buried doubt becomes distance. This is the moment belief becomes personal, because now God is no longer an inherited idea. He is a contradiction. You were told God is loving, yet pain continues. You were told God is just, yet injustice survives. You were told God listens, yet your voice echoes back to you. And here is a truth most people never examine. The human mind cannot tolerate meaningless suffering. Pain is survivable. Meaningless pain is not. So the mind searches for structure, for explanation, for pattern. A man loses everything he worked for. He tells himself, maybe this happened for a reason. Not because he knows the reason, but because without that thought, he collapses. A woman loses someone she loved deeply. People tell her, they're in a better place. She holds on to that idea, because without it, the grief becomes unbearable. This is not religion. This is psychological survival. The mind would rather accept a painful explanation than no explanation at all. And this is where God often enters the picture. Not first as a deity, but as a framework. A structure that says, this is not random. This is meaning. This is not the end. Remove that framework too quickly, and something else fills the vacuum. Control, addiction, obsession, anxiety. Because humans must build their lives around something stable. If not God, then success. If not faith, then status. If not divine purpose, then personal power. The structure remains. Only the object changes. This is why some people leave God but never leave worship. Because worship is not about religion. It is about orientation. What does your life orbit around when everything shakes? Here's something uncomfortable. God is not the opposite of logic. God is what the mind reaches for when logic reaches its limit. A scientist stands under the night sky. He understands equations. He understands gravity. He understands matter. But staring into endless space, he feels something he cannot measure. That feeling is not ignorance. It is humility. The recognition that the mind has edges. The danger is not doubt. The danger is shallow belief. Because shallow belief collapses under pressure. Deep belief survives collapse. But deep belief is not inherited. It is rebuilt. And rebuilding is painful. Because it requires you to sit in silence without running, to stay in uncertainty without numbing it, to ask harder questions without demanding easy answers. Most people turn back here. They choose certainty over truth. They return to comfortable language, comfortable rituals, comfortable versions of God. But if you stay in the silence long enough, something subtle begins to shift. Maybe God is not silent. Maybe he is simply no longer speaking in the language you were taught. And that possibility changes everything. After doubt, God never looks the same. That's what scares people. Because the God you return to is never as simple as the one you left. At some point, belief stops being about God. It becomes about you. Because when belief cracks, the first fear is not, what if God doesn't exist? The real fear is, who am I if he doesn't? When the structure disappears, the responsibility remains. No divine plan to lean on. No invisible safety net. Just choice after choice and the weight of the consequences. Freedom sounds beautiful, until you realize it comes without guarantees. Without belief, every decision feels heavier. Why be honest if no one is keeping score? Why endure pain if there is no greater meaning attached? Why choose integrity when no reward is promised? And this is where something surprising happens. Even people who lose belief rarely lose their moral instinct. A man stands at a crossroads. He can lie and win. No one would know. He hesitates, not because of law, not because of fear, but because something inside him refuses. Where did that come from? If God is gone, why does conscience remain? Because belief did not invent values, it protected them. And when belief falls away, values are left exposed. Some strengthen them, others abandon them. Same loss, different outcome. So maybe belief was never the guarantee. The self was. This is where the question shifts again. Do you believe in God? Becomes, do you trust yourself without a witness? Because belief in God often acted as a mirror. When no one is watching, who are you? This is the part most people avoid. They don't fear God. They fear being alone with themselves. God gave them company, direction, and excuse when things went wrong. Without God, there is no one left to blame. And that level of responsibility is heavy. Some people run back to belief quickly, not because they found truth, but because they found relief. Others stay away, not because they are strong, but because they are afraid of rebuilding meaning from scratch. But if you stay long enough, if you sit in the silence without collapsing, something changes. God starts being a rescuer, and starts becoming a standard. Not a voice that interrupts your life, but a presence that sharpens it. The deeper version of God cannot be bargained with. You cannot hide behind it. You cannot blame it, because now belief demands participation. A woman chooses kindness when no one is watching, not because she fears punishment, but because it aligns with who she has decided to become. A man admits the truth even when lying would be easier, not because God is watching, but because he is. This is not obedience. This is integrity. And integrity does not come from blind belief. It comes from awareness. The old idea of God said, trust and wait. The deeper idea says, see clearly and act. But God was never meant to replace your responsibility. He was meant to heighten it. So when someone asks you now, do you believe in God? You may pause. Not because you don't know, but because the answer no longer fits into a simple sentence. Because belief, after doubt, is no longer about certainty. It is about orientation. What direction your life points toward when no one is guiding you. And maybe that's why silence was necessary. If every prayer had been answered, you would never have learned how to stand. If every pain had been removed, you would never have discovered what you could carry. Maybe God was never meant to be the voice that speaks for you. Maybe God was meant to be the awareness that watches what you choose to become. So I'll ask you one last time, not as a test, not as a trap, but as a mirror. After everything you've seen, after everything you've lost, after the silence, do you believe in God? Or have you finally begun to understand him differently?